Hello and welcome back to Joe's Math Tools. In our session today, we are talking all about multiples. We will be looking at what are multiples, some helpful tips that would help you with listing your multiples, and then looking at how you actually would list your multiples. So if you want to learn about multiples today, let's get started. So what is a multiple? A multiple is simply the product of multiplying a certain number by another. And we're going to look at an example of how we list our multiples. So in our question that we have today, which is 4 times 5 equals 20, 4 and 5 are what we call the factors. I remember that we said the multiple is the product, which means that it's an answer to a multiplication of multiplying a number times another. So in this question, 20 would be what we call our multiple. So 4 and 5 would be factors of the number 20, but 20 would also be a multiple of both 4 and 5. So we're now going to look at some helpful tips that will help us when listing our multiples. Tip number 1. The first multiple of every natural number is always that number. So that means that if I'm listing the multiples of 10, then 10 should be the first multiple of the number 10. Or if I'm listing the multiples of the number 12, then 12 should be the first multiple of the number 12. So now let's look at an example. So in this example, we are listing the multiples of the number 4. And in listing these multiples, notice that 4 is the first multiple that I've listed for the number 4. Tip number 2. The last multiple of every natural number is unknown. Now the reason we're saying that the number is unknown is simply because multiples go on to infinity the same way that numbers go on to infinity. Because you can always multiply the number that you're listing the multiple of by another number, that means the possibilities of getting an actual multiple of that number or the last multiple of that number is simply unknown. Because if you can think of a larger number, then there's a possibility that there could be a larger multiple listed for that number. So these are just a few of the multiples that we have listed, but even though I stopped at 40, 40 is not the final multiple of the number 4. Tip number 3. All of the multiples are always larger than the number that you are actually listing the multiples of. And again, I'm going to refer back to my multiple for the number 4. And if you notice, in listing these multiples, 4 is the smallest multiple that I listed for the number 4. And as we go on through our sequence of multiples for 4, each of the numbers keep increasing. So remember that with your multiples, the numbers should be getting larger and not smaller. So how do we actually list the multiples of a number? Now let's go through an example where we're going to be listing the multiples, or rather the first 6 multiples of two numbers. The first number we're going to look at is the number 12. And in listing my multiples for the number 12, we're going to list the first 6, which means I'm looking at the first 6 numbers in the 12 time table. So in 12 times 1, we'll get 12. In 2 times 12, we will get 24. In 3 times 12, we will get 36. In 4 times 12, we get 48. And then with 5 times 12, we get 60. And 6 times 12 will give us 72. Now these numbers that are the product of our multiplication, which is 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, and 72, these would be the first 6 multiples of the number 12. Let's try a next one. Why don't you try and list the multiples of the number 9? And when you're ready, you can unpause this video and play along to see if me and you got the exact same multiples. So now let's list our first 6 multiples for the number 9. So when 9 times 1, we got 9. 9 times 2 is 18. 9 times 3 is 27. 9 times 4 will give us 36. 9 times 5 will give us 45. And 9 times 6 will give us 54. And again, 9, 18, 27, 36, 45, and 54 are the first 6 multiples of the number 9. Okay, so there you have it. I hope that these tips that we learned about multiples today was very helpful to you. I hope you were able to follow along, and most importantly, I hope you are able to apply them as you move forward in listing the multiples for the numbers that you are also given. So remember to get some additional practice in, develop your math skills, and when you're ready to learn more about mathematics, make sure that you tune back into Jules Math Tools, where we make math easy.